Welcome to the Engage podcast, where theology meets the real world, where we put theology into action. I'm managing editor of EngageMagazine.net, Teddy James.
And I'm project director Jordan Shamblin.
So, what's going on, man?
Not much. Not much. Actually, that's not a good thing to say to your boss.
For real. Yeah. So, tell me how hard you're working.
So hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I enjoy every minute of it.
There we go. So, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about being unoffendable, being offense-proof, and what that means for a Christian.
Offense-proof? No, Christians are supposed to be offended by everything.
I know, right? Yeah.
So, one of the things we're always going to do on this podcast is we are going to always pick a topic, and then we're going to find a really good book on said topic. This week's is by Brant Hansen. It's called Unoffendable. We're going to put a link to this in the show notes. Great. Man, this was a good book.
It was really, really a good book and very convicting.
Oh, convicting is definitely the word that I would use for that. I was very offended by how offended I have been.
Yeah.
And as soon as I finished reading this, I got an email, and I was reading it, and I got so angry at the email, and then I thought, no.
Yeah. Darn you. Look.
For real. It's one of those things, and it seems good in practice or in theory.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of objections to being unoffendable. So here's the premise. It should be impossible to truly anger you. I get road rage.
Me too, and I'll tell you when. Especially, it's through when it's a drive-through and someone's looking at their phone, and two cars have already gone by, and there's this 2-car gap, and this person's just looking at their phone. Or
at the ATM.
I don't go to the ATM that much, but I can see. Yeah,
the ATM is my really really bad thing. So this was my response. Now I'll say this: I heard Brant Hansen speak at a conference that I went to. The guy was absolutely incredible. And there you go. We do have some objections that we need to bring up, like righteous anger. Is there such a thing as righteous anger?
Well, he calls it a myth,
right?
Which surprised me. Because I was just thinking, all these terrible things in our society, should we not be angry? If it doesn't cause anger, isn't there something wrong with us?
Right, because it's that righteous. To associate righteousness with something means it's a good thing. So we're saying that this anger is a good thing to have.
Yeah, and what I liked about how he handled that, he clarified. Anger does not equal activity or action. Anger does not equal taking a stand. So you're not I guess depowering the Christian in the culture by saying no, you cannot be angry. In fact, I feel like, and I would say what he says, you're empowering the Christian by taking away the weakness of anger. Right.
Anger really does weaken you. But he said about that, the people who are often the most indignant voices in protest of injustice are least likely to part with their own resources to do anything about it.
Wow.
So he talks about how we get, we'll join we'll like this page on Facebook, or we'll do this really silly thing. But all that it actually does is it causes us to do less. Because we say, oh, I've shared this post on Facebook. I've tweeted this out. I have raised awareness of this issue. Aren't I good?
Yeah, and that's it. It's at a root. Anger and that is all from pride.
Right, it's an ego issue. Yeah. Now, here's the question. Jesus got angry.
Jesus also commanded the waves. He can do things that we can't do.
and that's the point that Hansen makes here. God can get angry in the same way that God can judge.
Yeah.
Can you judge?
Well, I certainly try to at times.
Right. There are moments where I want to. There are situations where I want to be judge, jury, and executioner. But we are not the judge. In fact, we will be judged. And that goes into why can we be unoffendable. So I think this was just so brilliant. The reason that we should not be angry is because we know our own hearts. So if I know the depth and the depravity of my own heart, how can I be surprised by the depth and depravity of someone else's heart?
Yeah, exactly.
So when somebody wrongs me,
Mm-hmm.
should it shock me?
Yeah, no, it should be a mirror, really.
Exactly. We should not live in this perpetual state of shock that somebody has wronged us, that a politician has lied, that a tyrant has killed his people.
Yeah.
I mean, history and the world has shown us that those things are not, they're not the exception.
Yeah.
They are the rule.
Mm-hmm.
It's when people are kind. It's when leaders give up power. That's why when we think of George Washington, we think of such a great man, because this guy was offered a kingship of America, and he said, no, absolutely not. In fact, 2 terms and I'm done.
Yeah.
That's why he stands out as such a great and even a humble man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the great thing about what he covered in the book was it doesn't just stop at the big things.
Oh.
He didn't, because it's comfortable sometimes to battle the big enemies in your life and leave the little ones. What got me was the petty offenses, the little things that just bother you, and it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's just something you identify with, that someone attacks, and then you get offended personally.
Right.
And how ridiculous it is when you think about it, but we also, every day.
You know what? And here's the thing: we've seen this online, especially. There's a trend here lately. The
fidget spinners.
Fidget spinners.
We've talked about this.
We have talked about this a few times. And fidget spinners, for some reason, just create this impotent rage within people that they just want to just get violent at somebody for having these fidget spinners. I don't understand it.
Me neither.
I really don't. It's funny to me. I do not understand why you get so angry over these fidget spinners. I think they're really cool toys.
Yeah, and I've got one, you know.
Right, yeah, you've got one.
It helps me think sometimes, you know. I just like to play with it.
That's what it is. That's you know, when you're being really busy in the day, you're playing with a fidget spinner.
Yeah. But in the end, I feel like it's just a way for people, it's just an easy target, you know, for people to make themselves feel better.
And I think that's what it is. We like being angry.
Yeah.
We just have to find something to be angry about.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you've been married for
a year.
So I've been married for more than that. I've been married for 8 years. And you know what? Sometimes in your marriage, you get a good mad on. You know what I'm talking about? You just...
The first year, you know.
Yeah, well... my wife's not going to listen to this, so I can talk about it. But the thing is, in a marriage, you're going to get that really good mad on. And I never thought of it like that till my wife and I went to a marriage conference. It was a great experience. We actually need to do a podcast on marriage conferences. I need to send you on one, and then we can talk about it. But the thing is, it was one of the presenters was talking, and he said that he went and washed his wife's car. He spent hours. Right, washing and waxing, cleaning the windows, scrubbing the tires, whole 9 yards. And he comes in sweating from his exertion. And she grabs the keys and goes grocery shopping. Yeah. She comes back in, says the windows are streaked. I actually did a whole article on this idea. It's called The Best Motives. But the thing is, he talked about having that really good mad on for hours. And then he had to stop and think, okay, what did she really say? Yeah. And what does she really mean? And so it was going into this whole thing. Not even connected with not being mad. He was just talking about conflict resolution. Compare what you know to what you feel. And in a lot of ways, when it comes to anger, we like what we feel more than what we know. Yeah.
It's so weird. We like to embrace the things that don't make sense at the expense of the things that do make sense.
Right. And even at the expense of relationship and at the expense of intimacy. Yeah. Because really, when we're talking about ego, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, it's an issue of the ego. Yeah. And so we want to inflate ourselves and make ourselves bigger. Because if I am big, you are small. And that, I think, is kind of what it boils down to. But it's not just the relationships that we have with people, it's also people we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we can get offended by other people who do other things that we find offensive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that struck me in the book too. It's not just the petty things, but it's even these really big ideas. Should we be angry when a lost person dishonors God?
Yeah, and that's something that I struggle with too. And if you had asked me that before looking through this book, I would have, without hesitation, said yes. And I would have equated anger with zealousness for the glory of God.
Well, I mean, when you look in the Old Testament, who was the prophet that ran a spear through two false prophets?
I don't remember his name, but
you know the story I'm talking about. You know what? Here's what you can make the text like scroll because I don't remember it either. But so I would be thinking the exact same thing, but it doesn't say the guy was angry, or does it?
No, it says, I think maybe zeal filled him, but we have to think, what is zeal and what is anger?
Right, and those are two different emotions. Those are two different responses to things. And going back, anger does not equal action. Those are two very, very different things. So we can do action without being angry.
And in fact, I feel like the antithesis of anger, the opposite of anger, is obviously grace and mercy.
Right.
And that is, anger puffs us up. It feeds our ego. Grace glorifies God.
Right.
It's completely opposite. And that is, I feel like that's probably the most clarifying thing that he covered, was that for the Christian, replace that anger with grace.
Which is so hard.
Yes.
And it's not fun to do.
Yeah.
But that means that we offer it to everyone in our lives, no matter who we're angry at right now.
Yeah.
Whether we're angry at the guy that just cut us off in traffic, or the guy that's sitting in the drive-thru looking at his phone instead of moving forward.
Or that millennial with the fidget spinner.
But the thing is, when we offer grace, what we're doing is we're showing what has been done for us. Because, and I don't want to get cheesy or cliche or anything like that, but the fact of the matter is, we have been forgiven much. And Jesus even says of the woman, she loves much because she has been forgiven much. The problem with us is not that we... it's not that we are so disturbed by our sin, it's that we think our sin is so small that it didn't take much for God to forgive us.
Yeah.
When nothing could be further from the truth. And when there's one of the things that he says, he says that we, I've got to find it. Yeah, okay, I didn't write it down. But the gist of it is this. How can I be angry at someone else's sin when it's not my place to judge them, like we talked about? But if I wanted to be angry at myself for my own sin, there's a difference in being repentant and feeling angry at myself for my own sin. God poured his wrath on Christ for my sin. There wasn't... And it's done. Yeah. It's over.
There's no more room for any more wrath.
Right. Yeah. So my wrath does not add anything to the infinite wrath of God that was poured out on Jesus. Right. It's saying that the cross was not enough. I have to pay some type of penance for that. And that's antithetical to the gospel.
Wow. So much deeper than anger management, this goes down to the heart of the gospel.
And that is the key, because when we're talking about anger, and I'll be honest with you, I said it before, I'm a hothead. I just deal with it. Now I'm not the explosive hothead. Yeah. You make me mad, I'm just the type, I'm gonna sit. Yes. I'm gonna look very zen on the outside, but just know on the inside it's a volcano, it's bubbling. But what Brant is saying, and there again, he makes it a gospel issue. where you don't have that right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that right to hold on to that anger. You don't have that right to be offended,
Mm-hmm.
even if someone has intentionally offended you.
Yeah.
And he shows some emails and some responses. This guy that wrote the book, Brent Hansen, is also a radio DJ. And so he gets tons of emails. And I'll tell you this. Engage has received a few emails.
Quite a few.
A few comments. Lots and lots of things.
Yeah.
We've received it all. And we actually have a discussion just about every time we're going to respond to one of the really fun comments. We have a discussion. Is it better to respond? Is it better to leave this out in the wind and let it die? What is the case? But inevitably, it gets under our skin. To say the least. And this guy talks about that. He gets emails that he used to would get under his skin, and now he just says, hey, thanks. Appreciate you listening and reaching out.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to respond to that? And when people attack him personally, he's like, yeah, you just don't know the half of it.
Seriously, yeah. If I can give you things to be mad about for real.
Right.
If you really knew me,
exactly,
you'd be more mad than this.
Right. If you knew, my thought life, if you knew the sins that I struggle with, you wouldn't be disappointed that I forgot to put the Oxford comma in a sentence. If you don't know what the Oxford comma is, just stick around. We'll get to it.
It's the most wonderful thing in the world.
It is. It's the most important comma
really
in
is.
the world. I love
it's
the Oxford comma. It
It
is. And I'm happy to say that Engage has always used
consistently.
Yes.
Without
and we
fail.
always will.
That's our promise to you.
But if we miss one, you don't have a right to be angry about it. I'm just... It just kind of bothers me when I read articles in other publications that don't use the Oxford comma. Can I get angry over that?
Yeah. Milk, cheese, and eggs. No, it doesn't work. Milk, cheese, and eggs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like we visited Grandma, talked, and then ate. Or no, what is that?
No, that's something else. Let's have Grandma for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Punctuation matters.
Punctuation matters a lot. But there is one that's like that where it's like the implication without the comma is that we ate Grandma.
Yeah. I can't remember it right now.
Anyway, so there's like a lot of stuff we don't remember. The show's not scripted, folks.
Nope.
Sorry.
No, that's the great thing about it.
So, anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, just that this is a great book.
There was one thing I wanted to say. So we're talking about should we be offended when someone attacks God, when someone attacks Christianity? All right. You ever seen the movie The Coast Guard?
No.
Or not The Coast Guard. The Guardian. That's what it's called.
The Guardian. No.
With Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher.
I don't think.
Pretty sure it's called The Guardian. Anyway, it's about the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
So Ashton Kutcher is this hothead guy. So imagine James Kirk in Star Trek. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he goes into this bar, and this is a Marine bar, and the Marines just start bashing all over the Coast Guard. And so Ashton Kutcher's like, I am going to defend the honor of the Coast Guard single-handedly. And he gets tore up.
Yeah.
I mean, the Marines just beat him senseless. Kevin Costner comes in and says, and he's talking to him about what happened in the fight. He says, the Coast Guard's been around a lot longer than you have. The Coast Guard has survived much worse attacks than by some drunk Marines in a bar. The honor of the Coast Guard will stand. You don't have to do that.
Wow. That is amazing. That's a great point. Yeah.
So the thing is, I'll say this. When it comes to false teaching, we have to stand for true teaching. We have to stand for the gospel. We have to stand for truth.
Yeah.
But we don't have to be angry in doing it. We can do so with grace and with mercy and show the love of Christ through that.
Because we do not honor God if we do this out of an angry attitude. Because if we're angry, is because of us. It's because we're doing it for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, what do you think? Do we, as Christians, have a right to be angry? Do we? Would you go even further and say we have an I can't think.
It's an obligation.
An obligation to be angry. You know what? Let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. And like I said, we're going to put the Amazon link to this book. There was one thing that I wanted to close on. And he says this. Once you realize your own moral failure before God, once you've abandoned the idea that your significance comes from anything other than God, you're growing in humility, and that's exactly where God wants us all.
Wow.
So I just wanted to close on that. Anger is an issue of pride. It's an anger. It's a issue of humility. Something that I know I struggle with, and something I'm going to be working on after reading Unoffendable by Brant Hansen.
Yeah, me too.
So, till next week, guys, share truth, apply scripture, engagemagazine.net.